Good evening. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Newport News School Board for Tuesday, November 17, 2020. On behalf of the members of the school board and superintendent, I welcome each of you present and watching. A quorum is present tonight to transact the business of the school division. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an unprecedented effect on all of us. We are all adapting to this temporary new way of life, and the school board is as well. Personal barriers are installed between members of the board, and our staff and visitors are socially distanced in the auditorium in compliance with the governor's orders. This evening, we have a school board member joining us electronically. Additionally, we have several reports this evening. Some of our presenters will join us in person, and others will join us virtually. We are taking these steps to ensure the health and well-being of our staff, students, and the public. We value and appreciate your partnership. We will begin tonight's meeting with an invocation and pledge to the flag. Here to do the honors is Ms. Ashley Tressard, 2020-2021 Newport News Public Schools Teacher of the Year, a science educator at Mitchellville High School. Ms. Tressard, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me. Well, let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, tonight I come before you praying for wisdom and discernment. May you give this board and NNPS leadership an openness to hear, to understand, and to respond to the expressed concerns of all stakeholders, to weigh the current COVID conditions, and make decisions that put the health and safety of staff and students first. I pray for appropriate questions to be asked and transparent answers to be given. May you guide and direct any decisions that are made here tonight. In your name, amen. And would you now stand and join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Ms. Tressard. She was kind enough to welcome me in her classroom this week when we had our Teacher for a Day experience, and really appreciated sitting in on your biology class and learned quite a bit. All right. The next item on tonight's agenda is school board recognitions. Dr. Parker.
Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Price, and we have several acknowledgments this evening, starting with the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting.
This month's school board recognitions. The school division's business office is responsible for providing sound financial management of the school division's resources. One of its most important duties is financial management reporting. As a public body, the school division's financial reporting must be understandable, transparent, and concise. This evening, we're pleased to acknowledge that the Government Finance Officers Association has recognized Newport News Public Schools for its comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2019. Accepting this recognition on behalf of the business office team is accounting supervisor and principal author of the financial report, Steve Cannell. Mr. Cannell, would you please come forward? The Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting is the association's highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting. To earn the award, the school division's comprehensive financial annual report was judged by an impartial panel and met the program's high standards by demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to communicate the financial story. The award is the highest recognition that school districts can receive and is awarded to districts that have met or exceeded each program's high accounting standards. Award-winning reports go beyond the requirements of generally accepted accounting principles to provide a variety of information, including financial statements, supporting schedules, statistics, and narrative explanations. The awards program is designed to encourage school districts to provide the public with a fair representation of all funds and financial transactions. This is the 19th year that Newport News Public Schools has earned this award. So, Mr. Cannell, we ask that you share this acknowledgement with the other members of the business office team. And while they're getting set up for a photo, I wanted to mention that this evening is bittersweet, as Mr. Cannell is going to be retiring shortly. So we'll let them take this picture. So Mr. Cannell is leaving Newport News Public Schools after 36 years of service in the business office. Again, congratulations, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
This week marks the annual observance of American Education Week, when school districts around the country celebrate and showcase public education. Our school district is commemorating American Education Week by showcasing virtual learning. Every day this week, schools are posting promotional messages and using social media to publicize how students are becoming college, career, and citizen ready through their social media, and they're using the hashtag NNPSProud. So our commemoration will continue through the rest of the week. The last recognition this evening honors our own leadership team. The school board and the superintendent hold the honor of being named a Virginia School Boards Association Master Board, only the second school board in the state to earn this designation. The VSBA Master Board program is a development process that emphasizes team building, communications, managing change, ethics, and working together to benefit every student. To be named a Master Board, the school board and superintendent must participate in an extensive professional development program offered by the Virginia School Boards Association. These dedicated individuals participated in over 18 hours of development in 3 months, focused on improving communication and board building behaviors. The Master Board training has led to several important changes in school board policy, including meeting structure and team communication to support the education of all of our students. Becoming a Master Board takes a commitment of time and energy and a willingness to learn about good board governance practices. Please join me in congratulating the Newport News School Board and our superintendent for earning this honor. And they're going to be recognized this week at the VSBA annual conference, at the annual state conference. So thank you very much and congratulations. At this time, we're going to take a brief recess. And during this time, our viewing audience will have an opportunity to view this month's School Board Spotlight. So we'll stand in recess for about 8 minutes. Thank you.
While October is recognized as Bullying Prevention Month across the nation, Newport News Public Schools celebrates it as STAND Month. STAND is a student-led initiative which motivates students, teachers, parents, and the community to work together to create and maintain a positive school culture. And even with a worldwide pandemic limiting face-to-face interactions, students and staff found creative solutions to take a stand for what they believe in. During the first Monday of October, the NNPS community wore blue for World Day of Bullying Prevention. Later in October, students and teachers at Riverside Elementary made their own creative ornaments at home. Once the ornaments were dropped off at school, Staff members hung the custom decorations on the school's kindness tree with care. Educators at Newsom Park Elementary made sure no student ate alone by inviting their classes to eat lunch together through Zoom meetings, while students and staff at Sanford Elementary produced a video about what kindness means to them and how they spread kindness to the community around them. And the NNPS student-led talk show, The Vibe, gave students a voice on social media to stand against bullying.
We already know bullying can have very negative effects on people. Putting others down does not make you better.
It's finally time that we stand against it.
Whether it's verbal or physical, it's not good at all.
People say the words don't hurt. That's not true.
Spreading kindness takes less work, and it makes you and everyone else feel better.
Practice kindness in person and online.
Saying hurtful things online is just as bad as saying them face to face.
Uplift each other. If someone's feeling down, talk to them and stand against the bullying.
Be there for each other. When we all come together, everyone feels better.
We are the Vibe student-led talk show, and we stand against bullying.
The NNPS Youth Development Team, which worked with a number of community partners to organize STAND events in October, was happy to host a series of digital citizenship lunch chats for middle and high school students. Students with the Young Adults Police Commission interviewed Master Police Officer William Zins about a range of topics relevant to Newport News teenagers, including social media, cyberbullying, and internet safety. During the Stand Together for Community food drive, 9 locations across the city collected non-perishable food donations and monetary gifts. Organized by Minchville High School students through the Lead for Change student leadership program, the community food drive collected more than 18,000 meals and over $4,000. All of these donations will fuel the Virginia Peninsula Food Bank's efforts to assist local families this holiday season. And the month wrapped up with Red Ribbon Week. Many schools showed their ongoing commitment to staying drug-free and making healthy choices by wearing red and participating in daily activities. The Epps Elementary family showed how they are more excited to share hugs than drugs. Families at Greenwood Elementary participated in a virtual 1K walk or run to promote healthy choices. Palmer Elementary held an art contest for students to visually express their reasons to just say no. And Minchville High donated red ribbon-themed bags to Gildersleeve Middle School, which were handed out to families during the Meals to Go service. Whether virtually or in person, students and staff in Newport News Public Schools spent the month of October expressing kindness and standing against childhood bullying. During Stand Day, Riverside staff went hunting for bears. Riverside bears, that is. October 7th was Stand Day, an opportunity for schools to promote a positive culture and discourage bullying. So educators at Riverside decided to close their laptops and take to the streets to help bridge the physical distance between school and families during the season of virtual learning. And what better way to go hunting for bears than on 2 wheels? Administrators, staff, and teachers strapped on helmets, tightened their masks, and navigated the neighborhood streets around Riverside for a 9-mile trek in search of excited students. The premise was simple: go to where the students live and remind them in person how much their teachers care for them. But the results went much deeper. For both educators and students, the gesture was a grand display of genuine affection, which was therapeutic for everyone craving interactions beyond a computer screen. By standing together in support of positivity, the Riverside Bears continue to build relationships no matter what obstacles lay ahead. The teachers and staff at McIntosh Elementary traded in their school colors for bright orange during Unity Day in October. This National Day of Camaraderie focuses on choosing kindness, acceptance, and inclusion. The bright orange colors are a striking visual expression of solidarity for all youth to live and learn, safe from the negative effects of bullying. To celebrate the occasion, McIntosh hosted a Unity Day car parade, inviting families to drive through the school's parking lot for a socially distanced yet festive experience. With music blasting and educators cheering, Students were excited to see some of their favorite teachers and chat briefly without the assistance of a camera and screen. By seeing each other in person, albeit for a brief moment, students and teachers were unified for a singular message of positivity.
Virtual learning is a new experience for all of us. By using mobile devices to stay connected to learning, students will naturally build their technological proficiency. But more importantly, virtual learning will allow students to build character as respectful members of an online community. One of the positive results of virtual learning is the number of valuable soft skills students gain by interacting within their virtual classroom. Communication, time management, empathy, and listening are important life skills that students gain by interacting with their teacher and classmates online. During Zoom meetings, it's best for students to keep their microphone muted and camera turned on. Muting the microphone limits distractions by cutting out unwanted background noise and allowing students to listen attentively. And by seeing students' faces and their body language, teachers can adjust their lessons for effective learning. Students should avoid multitasking, such as eating while learning, so they can be fully engaged in the lessons being taught. Whether students are speaking to the whole class or sharing ideas through chat, they should respect others' opinions and their cultures. Just like traditional learning in a physical classroom, students should always wait their turn, answer when called upon, and be respectful with their words and actions to help create a positive learning experience for everyone.
Well, welcome back. We hope you enjoyed this month's School Board Spotlight. During our regular meetings, we provide time for the public to address the board. These opportunities are scheduled in the early part of our agenda and also towards the end of the meeting. The school board recognizes that during the pandemic, some members of the public may not be able to join us in person. As advertised, citizens may submit comments via web form, email, or voicemail up to 30 minutes prior to our meeting to be included in the official meeting record. For those of you joining us in person, the board considers this an opportunity to listen to your comments. Please understand that we will consider your concerns and get back to you at a later time. We ask that you comply with our 3-minute time limit. As you begin your comments, a green light will come on, a yellow light signals that you have 30 seconds remaining, and a red light beep indicates that your time is up. As your name is called, please come forward. And I do have 2 cards at this time. All right, so Mr. Jordan Gray.
All right. Good evening, Newport News Public School Board. My name is Jordan Gray. I'm a teacher, 6th grade U.S. history teacher at Achievable Dream Middle and High School, proud. And I just want to talk tonight a little bit about the ongoing direction of our school division and some issues that I see as a public educator here within our city. But I really want to note that tonight I speak to you not really as an educator, but more so as a proud taxpayer, a voter, and a resident of the city. And I see these problems as something we need to fix now. Firstly, tonight I want to address the board on the issue of teacher workload and expectations. There are teachers all across this city who feel overwhelmed, overburdened, and tired. Every time we turn our computers on, there's another email waiting for us explaining that there's this additional thing that we need to do. Every time that we turn to our leadership here at the city, there's something else that we have to watch, another video to watch, another professional development that we have to attend, or another module that we must complete. In a time where people need the flexibility and those openness and the freedom to be able to have the stress relief that teachers need, the board and the division leadership has put more on teachers than many of us are able to bear. I stand before you tonight and plead with you, number one, to firstly consider every decision that you make concerning professional development and requiring teachers to do this thing, extra upon this thing, extra upon this thing. When we closed in March, you guys did a fantastic job with supporting teachers, with helping students, and backing up parents. This school year, we've seen a reversal of that. We've seen a reversal. We've seen an overload and the beginning of micromanagement in our very school system. I also want to talk tonight a little bit about the issue of student attendance. It's an issue that not many people like to talk about. But I was informed the other day by several different secretaries across the city that students are counted present when they are not attending all of their classes. A student can attend one class of one teacher for the matter of moments in a day and still be counted present. I hope that brings problems and brings things in your mind that we need to consider and look at. And finally, I want to talk about the communication. Our division has been handing over things to teachers at the last second, expecting teachers to pick up the workload and to be able to do their job. I plead with you today that you need to communicate with teachers in an effective way and to allow us to get our jobs done in the right way. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm proud to work for the school division.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. All right, our next speaker is Ms. Mary Voss.
And I emailed my comments to the board as well. Hello, my name is Mary Voss. I'm an NNPS graduate, teacher, and parent. I want to thank the Newport News School Board and NNPS administration for wisely delaying in-person hybrid learning despite many districts rushing to reopen and now having to reclose as their case numbers spike. I hope you will continue to keep a very close eye on public health metrics as we head into January, because with multiple COVID vaccines that are 90+% effective around the corner, caution can literally save lives in Newport News. Virginia Beach and Chesapeake have the two most aggressive school reopening plans in the region, and now those two cities are experiencing the most severe COVID outbreaks in Hampton Roads, with their percent positivity rates nearly doubled over the last month, according to 13 News Now. Multiple peer-reviewed studies now show that children are indeed efficient carriers of COVID. In fact, young children infected by COVID have 10 to 100 times as much of the virus in their nasal passage as older children and adults. So yes, the children do take the disease home to their grandparents and to other immunocompromised loved ones. Also, analysis of data from 131 countries shows that reopening schools leads to a surge in the R transmission rate, with COVID transmissions increasing by an average of 24% within 1 month of schools opening, which made me wonder, when did Virginia Beach open? About a month ago and some change. According to the CDC, almost all of the children and teens who've died of COVID are African American or Hispanic, in addition to African American and Latinx populations being at 5 times greater risk of severe COVID. The disease is also very dangerous for many special needs populations, such as Down syndrome people, having 10 times greater likelihood of dying from the disease. They'd be in the first wave back if they're in a special ed self-contained classroom. So what's behind this push to reopen schools when so many students, teachers, staff, and families are at increased vulnerability to COVID? A Washington Post study examining 10,000 school districts found essentially no connection between COVID-19 case rates and decisions regarding schools. Rather, the two main factors that determined whether a school district opened in person were the level of support in the district for Donald Trump in 2016 and the strength of teachers' unions. Finally, I ask the board and administration to please consider implementing guidelines to determine when teaching virtually from school sites may not be safe for school staff. One of the CDC COVID indicators for schools, percent change in new cases per 100,000 in the last 7 days, is already in the red here in Newport News. And another indicator, new cases per 100,000 in the last 14 days, is rapidly approaching the red zone. When our public health metrics are in the danger zone, it's safer for teachers and staff to have the option to work from their homes. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Voss. Do we have any more cards? Do we have any more cards? All right, seeing no additional cards, we will now move on to section 3 of our agenda, the consent agenda, which includes 3.01 minutes from the special call meeting on October 6, 2020, 3.02 minutes from the joint meeting with City Council on September 22nd, 2020, 3.03 minutes from our work session on October 20th, 2020, and minutes from our regular meeting on October 20th, 2020. 3.05 financial reports, including the revenue report for October 2020, the expense report for October 2020, and the child nutrition services report for October 2020. 3.06 personnel report, 3.07 budget transfer. At this time, can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ely? Mr. Harris?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
4.
Mrs. Searles Law?
4.
Mrs. Amon?
4.
Dr. Best?
4.
Mr. Brown?
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Then that will move us to our item number 4, our action items. We first have item 4.01, new and revised policies. So Dr. Parker, do you have a presentation to remind us of the new and revised policies?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Brooks provided that presentation at the last board meeting, and unless board members have any questions regarding those policies going before action, I'm sure she'll be happy, or our legal counsel will be happy to assist.
All right. So at this time, why don't we take a motion so we can start discussion on the topic if we need to. Can we have a motion to approve the policies as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the revised policies as presented at our last board meeting.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Any questions? All right. There being none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ely?
4.
Mr. Harris?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
4.
Mrs. Searles Law?
4.
Mrs. Amon?
4.
Dr. Best?
4.
Mr. Brown?
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, then that will take us to section 5, our reports and information section. 5.01 is an update on return to learn, and now, Dr. Parker, I believe you do have a presentation for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and joining me will be Dr. Banglamot virtually. She will be presenting the instructional portion of this presentation and assisting. Also, my administrative team is present to assist with any questions that the board may have regarding our return to learn planning. Good evening, Chairman Brown, Vice Chairman Searles Law, and board members. This evening, we will share our latest updates to the Return to Learn planning for the school division. Please know that the entire plan is available on the school division website, as of this evening, for public view. Additionally, the community may leave questions or comments on the webpage, which we will review as we continue to prepare for the eventual return of students to in-person instruction. Now, as you recall, in October, the decision was made to delay our planned phased schedule for in-person instruction until further notice. This decision was made primarily to allow our division and school leadership adequate time to collaborate around several facets of the Return to Learn plan. Over the past 4 weeks, we have worked with building leadership, including classroom teachers, to update safety protocols, establish building procedures, develop a COVID-19 health metric dashboard, and update the Return to Learn plan to include a revised timeline for phasing in in-person instruction. We will share information on several of these items this evening. However, we encourage parents and staff to review the full plan on the division webpage for detailed information. I will begin with talking a little bit about our COVID health metrics, because that's the most important thing that drives any plan and any actions that we will take moving forward. I reiterate that we are in the midst of a pandemic. This is a non-traditional phase and school year, and many of the decisions that we're making are not necessarily popular decisions. But we have to continue to remember that we are in the service-oriented industry. We serve our students and serve our public. And we have to make important decisions, tough decisions sometimes, to make sure that we're doing that as best possible. I'll start this evening with those COVID metrics. And what you have here are the state COVID metrics here from the CDC's website. This figure provides a current look at the extent of COVID-19 transmission around the Commonwealth. The darkest blue area of the chart indicates areas of the state that are currently at the highest rating of transmission for COVID-19. As the governor stated in his remarks, we are seeing the highest rates of transmission in the western areas of the state. That is where we've been trending up significantly for quite some time. However, the rest of the state remains in a moderate area, but we are trending in the wrong direction, as we will see on the next slide. So this slide here shows basically all the regions of the state, and there are three areas here on this chart. One is the burden, the other is the trend, and the other is the transmission extent. And obviously, when we see arrows pointing up this time of year or under this pandemic, it's not a good thing. So we see that our entire state, while Virginia is doing much better than a lot of other states around the country, we are recently seeing an upward trend in our COVID metrics. The eastern region is the region that we reside in, and we are considered in a moderate burden range at this time, but trending up. And we are approaching substantial community transmission, while some other communities around the state are at substantial community transmission already. A breakdown of what those items mean: the burden column is the current quantity or 7-day moving average of various metrics, and the measure of the current point of time at this current point in time for the overall metric COVID data. The trend arrow obviously points to a trend over time and shows that our data is trending in a positive direction. And the extent column tells you basically consolidates a variety of data sources into one metric to determine whether a region is at substantial community transmission or is approaching substantial community transmission. The next slide is on this CDC chart here, kind of coordinates with the color codes scheme of our health dashboard. As you can see, this data shows around the state where localities fall in the areas by the rating that we're using on our, the CDC color codes: lowest risk, lower risk, moderate risk, higher risk, or highest risk. While the first two state graphics may group each region, we can see that this one shows over 14-day periods where those divisions fall, and that's exactly how we measure it on our dashboard over a 14-day average. So when we move to the next slide, this is our actual area here, the eastern region. And we can see, as we focus solely on the eastern region, we can see that our regional data currently reflects an upward trend since around October timeframe. And as we move into the holidays, we hope that this trend does not continue. We can see that in mid-July, when the governor instituted much higher restrictions in the state of Virginia, in particular in the Hampton Roads area, we saw that our data started trending in the right direction. We're hoping that with these new restrictions that are put in place, that over the holidays and moving into the new year, we'll see a positive trend where our data will be decreasing as we return from the holidays. But we can't project what will happen over a month from now. But we know that this did work in the past. The governor has put those restrictions in place for a purpose, and hopefully we will see a trend moving our region in the appropriate direction. So just a little bit about the governor's new orders. I want to make sure everyone has some clarity on that. The first thing the governor did is he did not change the phase that we're in. We're still under phase 3 of his guidelines for reopening schools. He did not move to a different phase. He did not move back to phase 2 or phase 1. We're still in phase 3, and these are some of the important things to know about phase 3. Are we a slide ahead? Because I'm looking at a different slide here. There you go. All right. So under phase 3, in-person instruction may be offered for all students. However, physical distancing should be implemented. So in our current return to learn plan, under phase 3, we're aligned with the governor's plan. Remote learning exceptions and teleworking should be options for students and staff who are at higher risk of severe illness. We offer that. Mitigation strategies may impact operations and capacity limits. We do that. We have those plans implemented in our plan for things like school buses, how many students are in a classroom, those types of things as we maximize social distance into 6 feet. So under his current guidelines, we are aligned with the phase 3 recommendations. If he moves to phase 2, then we have to look at how that would impact our plan, which is why we have to make sure we view that return to learn plan as a dynamic document that may change as the governor's directions change or CDC recommendations change. So this week, he mentioned some reductions as of Sunday. Some of the reductions that he mentioned were he looked at private and public gatherings of from 250 down to 25 individuals. Now, it's important to note that those restrictions do not apply to schools or public institutions. They were meant intendedly for places of business like bars, retail establishments, those types of things. However, we have no plans on having 25 people in a school building gathering in large groups of that nature. We'd hope that our schools are maintaining virtual meetings as they meet with their staff, and teachers are working independently in their rooms, and that we're practicing social distancing in an appropriate way. So in these ways, that restriction does not impact our public schools. Now, if we ever have athletics, we have to factor in that athletic participation and partners, people who come to view the athletic event. That restriction would be in place to make sure that because that does fall well within the governor's guidelines. He also implemented some mandates in terms of face masks, and I'll read through a few of these restrictions here. Okay, bars, retail establishments we're seeing increases in transmissions. So the second they said the second most frequent place for transmission is in family gatherings. So the governor reemphasized that moving into the holidays, what most folks do is they go home and they relax around their relatives, and they don't social distance, don't wear face coverings, and those so when students are coming back from college and other things, that the second most frequent place for transmission is in family gatherings, which is why we need to be cautious over the holidays. He did implement the 25-person cap. It didn't apply to schools. And for children, he implemented a mask mandate for children 5 and over. Okay, for ages 5 and over. And that was not in place until his recent mandate. Okay, so those are some of the things that factor into the governor's recent mandates for lowering the COVID transmission. So moving on to our website, this is just a snapshot of our dashboard. The next few slides are specific to our current COVID health dashboard that's available on our division webpage. And community and staff can view that dashboard, and at any point it's updated weekly, or it's up, and in many cases we'll update it as frequently as we have new information. But we chose, when we developed this dashboard, to not just focus on Newport News, and there was a good reason for that. We found that almost 40% of our workforce lives outside of Newport News, so it didn't make very good sense to just have Newport News metrics, health metrics on our dashboard. We looked at the Greater Peninsula. And then eventually we said, well, we have people even further than the Greater Peninsula. They live on the South Side and other places. So we said we'll include all three, which would be the Eastern region, the Greater Peninsula, and the metrics for the city of Newport News on our dashboard. So you'll see all three represented there. You'll also see the color coding that's coordinated with the CDC guidance from lowest risk to highest risk. And just to let you know, the magic number on the highest risk, the red column, is 200 instances over a 14-day period, 200 per 100,000. And just to give you some historical perspective, when we presented to the board on October 6th, we were at 86 per 100,000 on that day. We were at 86 per 100,000. And just a week later, we were trending up into 90, and then we went into the hundreds. We're currently at 150, I want to say 52, 152 per 100,000. Is it higher? Higher, 155, I think is one. There you go. So we're creeping in the wrong direction. Some local divisions have exceeded the 200, which puts them in the red, which is the highest rating on this chart here. So, folks, we're heading in the wrong direction, and that is one of the major reasons when we were developing the timeline that we'll present in this presentation, that a decision was made to look beyond the holidays. And hopefully the governor's restrictions will fall into place. Hopefully folks will take heed to their safety, and our metrics will move in the right direction by the time we reconvene in the new year. So we'll share that timeline in a moment. But that's one of the issues that's driving us, our decision making here. Another thing about this dashboard here, if you can go back to that, each one of the dots there, they're color-coded as well. So if you see a green circle, that means that data is currently trending lower. If you see yellow, it's fluctuating. It's staying in a range, but it's fluctuating. And if you see red, that data is consistently increasing. Okay, because this is a range of information on that. Now, how do we use this data? So there are two ways that we're using this, the dashboard, and I'd like to speak to that for a moment. The first is to determine, we had to identify ranges that other school divisions and areas are working with in terms of their moving towards in-person instruction. So we looked at a lot of different school divisions and private schools to see where their COVID data was, how they were operating in terms of in-person instruction. We conferred with our health department, and we also looked at CDC guidance to determine what can we do to maintain safety in our schools during this pandemic. The standard that we received was that the CDC's recommendation that we implement consistently the 5 standard safety mitigation strategies in all of our schools, and it has to be consistently. The CDC indicates that it lowers the risk of COVID transmission in a school building. All of these schools that are moving forward with in-person instruction, including private schools, are implementing those five standards, and I'll speak to those in a moment. That's the standard that keeps the building safe. What happens around in community transmission could be impacted by a lot of different reasons. We have a very large national employer that's located right here in Newport News, and we have local colleges that are around. So our regional data could spike based on a community transmission at a large facility, a large employer. In the city of Newport News, data could spike based on a large employer having a community spread situation. So when those type of things happen, we have to also understand how we're going to respond and react to that data. So with that being said, when we're in these areas here, we know that we can rely on those CDC standards for safety to maintain a lower risk of COVID transmission in our building. And I'll talk about those 5 safety standards in a moment. The other piece that we need to understand is that we are still moving forward with student athletics. So our COVID data will also impact how we respond in terms of student athletics and other events. It may limit how we go about our business in terms of in our buildings, whether it's our staff individually or staff and students. But when we get into the red, which is the next slide here, that's when one of those areas, whether it's the region, the Greater Peninsula, or the City of Newport News' COVID data, could go into the red at that time. Now, it's quite possible that the region could be in red and Newport News could be in yellow or green. Or it could be quite possible that Newport News could be red and the region could be in a lower risk category. But we've indicated that whenever any one of those 3 indicators go red, we will stop and assess where we are. And to be clear, perfectly clear, when I say stop and assess, assessing may mean that we may take several actions. One could be moving back to virtual instruction, depending on the circumstances that cause that spike. The health department has more data than they display on their webpage. They can tell you where data is spiking. They could say it's a local college that had 20 or 30 cases. They could say that it's a regional issue at a certain location and they could identify specifically where the community spread is taking place. So when we say we're going to assess, it doesn't mean that we're not going to act. It means that we are working with the health department to determine the most logical course to move forward, whether this is a spike due to a singular incident or community spread event, whether there is something that would cause significant community spread in our schools, if we're not seeing community transmission in our schools, but there's a spike somewhere else in the region. It may not warrant closing all of our schools down. It may mean looking at our safety procedures to make sure that we're being serious about our mitigation strategies and implementing them in fidelity. Or vice versa, if it's in our local community and we're seeing spread in our schools, or we're seeing instances in our school, then it may mean shutting our schools down temporarily and going virtual instruction for a period of time. So to be clear, that when we say if we go into the red, okay, we stop and we assess where we are and we make a decision on what is the best thing that we can do for the safety of our staff and students. Okay, and that will be in conjunction with the local health department, because they have other data regarding whatever that spike may be to give us the proper guidance to warrant safety. Okay. But the one thing we can assure is that we will not transition any new students into the building, because those other students have already been acclimated to the building. They're already acclimated to the safety protocols. So during that period where we're making a decision on what our next steps will be, no further implementation of in-person instruction would move forward. Okay. The other part of the dashboard is the piece that I think it will be very helpful to our parents, to our staff, and to our students. If you look at this link right here, this starts at the beginning of the school year. And since the beginning of the school year, yes, we have 12-month employees that have been working in our schools since schools closed in March. So at the beginning of the school year, we have staff in buildings. So we continue to track any staff who report a positive case. What we have found is we haven't had any instances of community spread in our buildings, but we have had staff who have reported a positive test in our schools. So when you hit the link below that, it gives you not only what site that individual, don't give a name, we can't do that, there are HIPAA regulations involved. So it'll give you the location of where that reported case was for around our schools, but it also will give you the last date a positive case was reported at that site. So if you see a positive case and the last positive date is September 28th, we know that there's not currently an issue with COVID-19 transmission at that school and or building. So that information is updated again weekly to make sure that we have that information available to our constituents as we transition teachers back to a work schedule inside of the buildings. We want to make sure we continue to track that, and that's how we would know if we have instances of community spread, if we see an uptick in cases, positive cases in our staff or our students once our students return, and we'll continue to use that data to make further decisions to make sure we're keeping everyone safe. So about the mitigation strategies, the 5 CDC strategies, and the reason we have so many bullets up here is because we're Newport News. We're going to do more than 5. So the 5 mitigation strategies that the CDC recommends that will keep students, that will lower the risk of COVID transmission in schools, consists of using a mask and wearing a mask at all times. And now that's pretty easy. The governor's mandated that, even when you're socially distancing beyond 6 feet. Proper social distancing at 6 feet. We want to do hygiene and respiratory etiquette, making sure that we're practicing hand washing, teaching our students how to, if they're in a situation where they have to cough without a mask or whatever, respiratory etiquette, consistently cleaning and disinfecting our spaces. And we have a very extensive cleaning cycle. And then also proper mitigation strategies, making sure that if we do have a positive case, that we have practices in place that would allow us to identify who came in close proximity to that individual. Now, just to be clear, the school division does not make the final decision as far as mitigation, social mitigation strategies, as far as when contact tracing, I should say, when someone reports a positive test. We report it to the health department, and then the health department will do their own investigation, and then they also will make a recommendation. So if a teacher is in a classroom and they have a positive test, that class will go home. We will tell the class, you need to go home to quarantine. But the health department will come in and do interviews. They will talk to that teacher. They will talk to other staff. They will do their investigation. And they may feel that additional folks may need to quarantine. So we do not make the final determination. It's just like teaching students. You know, they remind us all the time, they're the professionals. So when it comes to a positive reported case, every decision we make will be in collaboration with the health department to make sure that our buildings remain safe. Okay. But in terms of, on this slide, there are other mitigation strategies that will ensure our safety and our success. We've purchased air purification systems for many of our classrooms in order to make sure that all of our spaces that are occupied by more than one person meet ASRE standards. Now, ASRE standards is just a standard for how much airflow and exchange a room would have over a certain period of time. Our buildings with newer ventilation systems, newer AC systems and ventilation systems meet ASRE standards. But we do have buildings that haven't had HVAC replacements or HVAC upgrades over some time. They're perfectly fine under normal circumstances, but we want to make sure we're meeting and exceeding the ASRE standards in all of our classrooms, that there's enough airflow to make sure that, and we consider that a safety mitigation strategy, and the CDC recommends it as well. We've purchased portable desk shields for classrooms and for those teachers who like to do station work or have smaller group, so kids can get a little closer in proximity if they need to do activities. Schools will have some of those available for use in their buildings. We have to become a school division of pre-screening every morning. That's staff and students. Our staff who are reporting to buildings, our staff who are reporting to school have to use those pre-screening checklist daily. And that has to become a routine that we all do. That is a safety measure that keeps us all safe. So that is a serious safety protocol to make sure we have those pre-screening guidelines in place. Encouraging staff and students to receive a flu vaccine. We are in the middle of flu season, and while flu can mimic some of the symptoms of COVID-19, it is important that and it will spike temperatures and do everything else that would really cause us some concern in our buildings. We are encouraging our staff and our students to consider a flu vaccine this year. So there are several other items up here that are in the full plan in terms of safety. Cohorting students when possible. It allows us the contact tracing to go much easier. Controlling the flow in your buildings to make sure that students are transiting the buildings in an appropriate way to minimize group gatherings, larger group gatherings. There are other recommendations that we've put in our plan to make sure that principals and teachers will consider as they plan for the return of students. So one of the things we wanted to do was start planning for staff to return to buildings 2 days a week. And there are several reasons why this was put into place. One is you can't normalize safety at home. If you have to prepare an environment for success, and we have to make sure things are done consistently, then we have to normalize those procedures. We heard early on that our teachers needed more preparation, more time to prepare their classrooms, more time to receive further instructions. There were processes in the schools that needed to be worked out, developing student schedules, just some consistency in our buildings in terms of our practices. So we felt that a lot of those things could be taken care of with some on-site work days that would allow us to be better prepared and better acclimated for safety once we increase the number of bodies in the building significantly once students report for in-person instruction. So with that being said, that's the big why, and I think it's something that we have to realize that under these certain circumstances, we're in a pandemic, we're taking it very seriously, we want everyone to be safe, but we can't give you a plan and say implement this plan without certain practices being ingrained in the entire faculty, because anyone can make anyone else sick. And the only way we can normalize that is if people are practicing those habits. And the folks who are not practicing those habits, we have to address it. We can't wait till the students get there to figure out that there's a problem. Because once we have community spread, that whole school has to shut down. So this will allow us to normalize safety practices in our buildings. So with that being said, I think I'm at the slide where I'm going to turn over for teaching and learning. Or there you go. So we're on the teaching and learning slide, and Dr. Manglamott will pick up, and then I will follow back up with some other points of clarification on the plan, as well as some next steps. Dr. Manglamott.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good. Good evening, Chairman Brown, Vice Chair Phil Law, members of the board, Dr. Parker. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to discuss the instructional models for the Phase 2 Return to Learn that we developed in partnership with all of our administration, principals, and all Newport News public school teachers. We have designed a flexible instructional model that's going to support student learning and the success for all students in grades pre-K through 12, whether they're learning in the classroom or whether they're learning at home. This applies to traditional learning, hybrid learning, and virtual learning. The flexibility of our model allows for the division to quickly move between phases of instruction in the event of an increase of positive COVID-19 cases within the community or individual school. Within the model, parents may opt for various options for learning. All the instructional options align with the required instructional minutes and seat times that are required by the Code of Virginia and the standards of accreditation as outlined by the Virginia Department of Education, and it ensures all standards of learning are taught. Until health metrics are deemed safe enough for all students to return to traditional learning, all Newport News families will have two options for student instruction. They can choose hybrid learning or virtual learning. Based upon the needs of students at each grade level, division teachers and leaders have developed both an elementary and secondary hybrid options for learning. Utilizing the data from our intent form, the average class sizes that came from that, and an analysis of what other regional school divisions are doing, we developed personalized hybrid learning options for elementary students and secondary students. We created and implemented a process to ensure the voices of all of our principals and all teachers were a part of this decision with which our students would return to in-person instruction. Based upon the regional models of surrounding school divisions, we created varying versions or options that teachers could pick up. We had 6 options, and as you can see, hybrid was the 2 days in person, 3 days asynchronous was the option that we presented to the board in October. There was another option, hybrid concurrent, which was 2 days in person and 3 days synchronous and asynchronous, but where our teachers teach concurrently. A co-teaching option, a mixed option, a half day 2 days a week, and half day 4 days a week. Both the hybrid and virtual models ensure the least disruption to student schedules and allows for a majority of our students to keep their current classroom teachers and provide for equitable instructional minutes with a teacher, whether the student or parent chooses the hybrid model for instruction or the virtual model. On the next slide, you'll see that elementary students will attend in-person instruction for a half day, 4 days a week. In the afternoon, elementary students will return home to continue their school day remotely. While in person, elementary students will receive focused reading, mathematics instruction, both whole group and in small groups. At home, students will work on science and social studies and resource classwork, both synchronously, which is the live teacher-student interaction, or asynchronously, independently. During the afternoon on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, the teacher will be working synchronously with virtual students to support mathematics and reading instruction. There are a few elementary considerations that we had to consider when we were looking at this particular model. One thing that our teachers liked across the board was the fact that this model provides equitable distribution of instructional minutes, whether the students are hybrid or virtual. All hybrid and virtual students will see their teacher 4 days a week. The hybrid students will see their teacher in person in the morning, and they'll see their students that are at home working virtually in the afternoon on Zoom. The majority of students within this model are able to keep their classroom teacher. While we know that management of hybrid classes with where teachers remain virtual is still a consideration we have to think about, and there is some probability that those particular students in those classes may have to shift classrooms. We were, of course, considered our child care concerns, but when we weighed child care concerns with that afternoon 4 days a week, we had to weigh it against the quality of instruction and the time with teacher, and determined that our parents would probably opt for the half-day model, even though it may present some child care challenges because the quality of instruction increases and the time with the teacher increases. We looked at mathematics and reading instruction will continue to be provided by the teacher, which is definitely a huge bonus for us. and science, social science, and history and resource will be majority asynchronous, but there will be times when it can be synchronous as well. When we look at the secondary hybrid option, it's very similar to what we presented to the board in October, but now follows a concurrent instructional model. Students in grades 6 through 12 will be divided into two cohorts as demonstrated in the table below. Cohort 1, last names A through K, will attend in person on Monday and Tuesday and participate in remote learning on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And Cohort 2, last names L through Z, will attend school in person on Thursday and Friday and participate in remote learning on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Instructionally is where this model is different. Our teachers will work concurrently with both their hybrid and virtual students throughout the day on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday to ensure all students have teacher-facilitated instruction regardless of whether or not the student is remote or in person. The schedule will also incorporate A and B day rotations between in-person and remote learning. This model is designed to ensure that students are able to participate in all magnet and specialty programs as well. So on the next slide, understanding how to teach concurrently is a shift from the traditional delivery of classroom instruction. So I know that the board and teachers and parents watching would want to know the difference or how we're going to be able to teach concurrently. When you look at the picture on the left, you can see that our teachers can teach to both our students at home and in person at the same time. Or you can utilize the flip-flop model, which is where our teachers will work with in-person students while our children at home are working asynchronously. And then when they're done teaching the students in person, they'll switch, and our in-person students will work asynchronously on work in class. It could be projects, they could be doing group work independently, they could be online, just depends. And then that teacher can work with students online synchronously while they're in the classroom. So these two approaches to this model allow our teachers the professional autonomy to decide which model works best for their teaching style, a student's learning style, and of course the content in which they teach. Some secondary model considerations include, again, this model is equitable distribution of instructional minutes. Our teacher has the same amount of time with both their synchronous or their virtual students and their hybrid students. Hybrid and virtual students see their teacher 4 days a week. They're concurrent, and it's during scheduled class times. It minimizes the need to readjust student schedule. And again, not all students will not have their schedules readjusted. You can see that the management of teachers that remain virtual, there will be some schedule adjustments, but it does minimize the need to readjust those schedules. And of course, we know that professional learning is needed in order for teachers to understand how they're going to work within the concurrent model. We're looking at doing simulations with our teachers and providing videos for them to watch and other types of professional development throughout the month of December to help them prepare for teaching in the concurrent model. Wednesdays will remain the same. They're going to be independent learning days where our students are working asynchronously at home. Students with identified learning supports will meet in small groups with teachers in the morning like they've been doing. Our afternoons are going to be continued to be reserved for teacher professional learning, whether it's division professional learning or building learning, for lesson planning, collaboration through professional learning communities, and of course gives them the opportunity to complete grading with virtual students and give the appropriate amount of feedback. Virtual learning will continue, and you can see that students, while they're learning virtually, it will be both synchronous and asynchronous. It's 4 days a week. Their students will meet synchronously with their teacher. And during the secondary model, it's during scheduled class time, and our elementary students will meet in the afternoon with our teachers. Wednesdays, our students will continue to work asynchronously, and there will be some small groups in place to support students who have certain learning needs. We will continue, the Virtual Learning Academy will continue in fall of 2021. Currently, there are too many students selecting virtual learning to house a separate academy, but once we return to traditional learning, we will provide for student choice, and they will have the option to learn virtually if they want to. Lastly, I'd like to speak to our magnet and gifted and specialty programs. During both hybrid and virtual learning, both hybrid and virtual learning students will continue with their current program of study. If a student is enrolled from Newport News due to child care concerns, re-enrollment once traditional instruction resumes will be afforded where space allows. And every effort will be made to continue enrollment in all current classes, with the understanding that some specialty classes may not be available within the virtual option. Students will not be penalized should they be unable to complete specific coursework required in their magnet program. Now, at this time, I'll hand the floor over to Dr. Parker.
Thank you, Dr. Manglamott. So we want to share with any parents that are online tonight that it took a lot of thought to get to this point. And one thing we did not want to do to you or your family was to put a timeline out there and then have to come back to the table and say either one, we're not ready, or it's not time that we feel it's safe. We wanted to give ourselves the best opportunity to be successful so that when we start phasing in-person instruction, that we can do it and hopefully do it and stay in that environment. There were several factors that led to looking at a time frame that would be into the new year after the holidays. One, you just saw our COVID numbers that are continuously trending up and have been trending up for since October. We are not in the highest range of the transmission scale, but we are approaching, and we need to see that data start moving in the right direction. It just at this time would not be feasible by the time we start moving kids in prior to the holidays. If we ended up in the red, we would have to either stop and or delay. And we're seeing several divisions that are making those tough decisions right now in the surrounding area. So the impact of the holidays was a factor that in our COVID data, the impact of the holidays approaching. We do not have any way of determining how the holidays will impact our COVID data, flu season, how that will impact. But by the time we get back from the holidays, we will have been in this environment for several weeks, and we should have a very realistic understanding of how the holidays, flu season, and all of those factors, the governor's restrictions, how they are playing in our COVID data and metrics. And we're hoping to see that it will be in a downward trend. So we're giving it time to make sure that we can assess the safety of returning students to in-person instruction. Looking at this timeline, it also gives us an opportunity to continue to work on bringing our younger students in. Bringing them in and not having a break over the holidays is the best approach, because we have to acclimate them to a safe environment and make sure that they become normalized in that environment, which would allow us to do that. A holiday break, we would have to pretty much, it would just be starting all over again, and we could possibly run into a situation where we're not safe. Consistency of class schedules. While the two plans that you were presented with this evening will allow us to minimize, thankfully, the number of class changes that we're projecting, there will still be a need to change schedules. And with our secondary students in particular, they have final exams, they have SOL testing, they have other items. Changing courses prior to the semester break for secondary students did not seem feasible and was not recommended as we planned this timeline. We wanted to provide adequate time for schools to work through safety protocols, to prepare classrooms, to develop class schedules for hybrid learners, and also to be acclimated and to receive, there's that word again, professional development on how to teach in a hybrid schedule. So we want to make sure that folks are ready for that and can do it effectively. There were many other concerns noted. However, these were consistent among the planning teams that worked on the timeline, and we had 3 separate groups working on these timelines to give us their best opinion of when we should return to learning. So here's where we landed. And again, I emphasize that our goal will be to continue to use our health metrics in the region, the Greater Peninsula, and the city to continue to monitor those. And if we are in a range where we can implement this timeline, we will do so. If we see that we're trending in the wrong direction or we're at the highest rate of risk, we would need to come back and look at when it would be feasible to implement. But our current plan calls for January 11th to bring in our special needs students, self-contained English language learners, newcomers, that's grades 1 through 8, and our pre-K through grade 2 students. And again, the hybrid plan calls for 4 days of instruction, for 4 days face-to-face instruction under the new plan. The second group that's coming in a few weeks later, January 25th, would be our grades 3 through 5. And then the beginning of the semester would be our secondary students, which is the normal break when they would get new schedules for the second semester of the year. It also allows us to complete our exam schedule. There'll be there's obviously semester oral testing. Most of that will be moved to virtual this year, but it leads to allowing for the continuity in our planning. And then the other piece that we have to worry about, I have to worry about with secondary education, is the number of bus drivers we have and transportation for bringing back all of our secondary students. As we mentioned in October, we're still working diligently to hire new bus drivers because we've had quite a few move on to retirement in other areas. So if anyone has any aspiring bus drivers out there, shameless plug, please contact us. We have a bus waiting for you. So with that being said, this is the schedule that we're proposing under the current plan, and just a few other items that we'd like to speak to this evening. Next slide. We always want to be aware of how the cleaning is going, and we don't like to brag in Newport News, but we probably do a better job of cleaning our buildings than a lot of other areas. We use the electrostatic cleaning before the pandemic, and many divisions and localities, the city also has taken up our cleaning methods. So we feel very confident that we have a good plan for cleaning. We obviously hire a consultant to look at our cleaning schedules, to give us some assessment as far as how effective our methods are and our products are that we will use for cleaning classes and buildings. But this is pretty much the bulk of our deep cleaning will take place on Wednesday, obviously, when we have the majority of our staff out of schools. But we do have staff on a daily basis cleaning in these areas that are noted here while staff are in the building, while students will be in the building, making sure that we are doing our best to maintain a safe environment for everyone. That means we have to continue to make sure that doorknobs and anything that's coming in contact with personnel is wiped down. Obviously, staff and may have some responsibility in that as well throughout the day, depending on what the circumstances may be. But we need to make sure that we normalize those procedures if we're going to minimize the risk of community spread in our schools. So cleaning is a very important part, and it's one of those 5 items that we talked about in terms of CDC mitigation strategies. So our next steps will be to continue to monitor our COVID health metrics into the holiday period, moving into the new year, to make sure they're, again, updated regularly. We'll continue to communicate with our building leaders. We'll continue to send out the Return to Learn weekly updates to our staff, making sure that everyone's aware of where we are and what are we considering in terms of our Return to Learn planning. We ask our building leaders and our teachers to start looking at your school routines. Kids will need to come in the building a certain way. They'll need to have use hand wash stations. They'll need to know how to transit to the restrooms and how to do and so many decisions that have to be made at the building level. Those are decisions that our schools need to make with their building leaders and teachers to normalize safety protocols in your schools. So use this period wisely to start looking at those processes. We have developed a COVID-19 handbook for principals, for school leaders, to give them some guidance and guidelines, checklists, and other items that will help them work through those processes with their staff. So our building leaders should be ready to go and work with our instructional leaders to make sure that we can put safety protocols in place. Prepare your classrooms and get ready for the arrival of students. They're making sure that if you need desks moved or lines on the floor or whatever it may be, to make sure you have a safe environment, making sure you have everything you need. to prepare your classrooms. We'll make sure that professional development, some folks will need that training on the hybrid schedule, and how to best utilize that instructional time. We'll be a resource for teachers in terms of that professional development. And then also some folks may need some training in terms of safety protocols. So we'll make sure that we make that available to staff as well. We want to make sure we start looking at our student schedules, our students who will be returning on hybrid, and also our students who remain virtual. Assigning teachers of record, making sure that that's communicated with parents, making sure folks are ready to go when it's time to do that. And we want to continue to engage our staff and community. Excuse me 1 second. I'm running my mouth too much today. We want to make sure that our staff and our community continue to have input in the plan. So we have put links on the plan that's on the website. You can access those links. You can input comments or questions. We will review that information regularly to start updating information through the Return to Learn plan. It may be information to our principals, but we need that input from parents and staff to continue working through some of the detail of the plan. And our goal, obviously, is to build the best plan possible. But we know we continue to rely on our staff and our parents for the questions and the answers that we may need. So we'll continue to engage and also have focus group meetings and make sure that we are continuing to listen to our staff and to our parents and community as we look at implementing our plan. So those are our next steps, and hopefully we will be able to come back in December with some more information on where our COVID data is looking, how are we feeling in terms of being on track, and hopefully we'll have some other good news to share in terms of how we're moving forward with this plan. So that concludes our report, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we'd answer any questions that the board may have at this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Parker, for that thorough report. And now, as we outlined earlier, we'll do one question at a time so we can do some rounds of questioning. So who would like to go first? Okay, Ms. Amon.
I have a clarification question, and thank you, both Dr. Mangamot and Dr. Parker. A lot of good information. And this is more clarification. I just don't want to make an assumption. To go back to the secondary concurrent hybrid model, just the chart, cohort 1 in person, cohort 1 remote, and then cohort 2 remote, cohort 2 in person. Is that who's morning and who's afternoon? Or would it be that the in person, theoretically, if you're on the flip-flop, you might be the teaching in person in the morning, and then whichever cohort is remote those days, that would be in the afternoon? So I guess my question would be, is cohort 1 always in the morning, cohort 2 is in the afternoon, or is it those that are in person, that's hitting them in the morning, and those that are remote for the day, they're going to be learning in the afternoon?
Good question.
That's a good question. Are you saying secondary or elementary?
Secondary.
Okay, secondary. Michelle, is there a way you can go to the slide?
It's 19, I think.
There you go. Okay, so what's happening, I know that it looks, and we talked about this model, it is not AM or PM. So if I have a Algebra 1 class and it's at the second period, then that teacher is meeting with all Algebra 1 second period students during that time. And if you go to the next slide, Michelle, so what happens on 9:15, and I'm either going to, as the teacher, teach both my students at home and my students in person at the same exact time, right, together. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with my in-person kids, and my at-home students during this block are going to be working asynchronously on work that I've already assigned. Then when my in-person kids have received my instruction, I am going to set them to work on something that is independent, or perhaps possibly a way that they can work together collaboratively, or they're going to be working on their, in Canvas with their Chromebook. And while that's taking place, I am going to then work with my students who are at home virtually through a synchronous modality like we've been doing this whole semester.
Okay, thank you.
Does that clarify?
It does. When you think of it in terms of your block schedules versus the afternoon and morning of an elementary. It makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Amon. Another question? Yes, Ms. Searles-Law.
So just for clarity for teachers who are going to be 100% virtual, can we just reiterate how they follow this program?
Oh, thank you, Ms. Searles-Law. I forgot to mention the that point in my notes here. So teachers that have submitted their health documentation for medical purposes to remain on virtual instruction will not report to buildings during this time on a 2-day cycle. We want to make sure that if they have legitimate health risk to either themselves or their family, that we want to make sure that they are in the safest environment possible, and that is at home. And so they will continue to work virtually with their students throughout this, and as we assign schedules, class schedules, and students are moved to a hybrid in-person instruction, those folks will remain virtually with their students. Okay. So they will maintain a class load that it will be virtual. So that is part of the work that will need to take place as we build student schedules, and that's why we needed that information and continue to collect it if there is any staff who have a medical condition that would warrant their working directly from home.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Another question? Yes, Dr. Best.
Okay, I have a couple. What
well, just your best one right now, and then we'll come back.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the best one. I'm going to combine it then. PPE and PPE, I believe the slide said, for staff where needed, and desk shields are available. You can't. It said PPE for staff where needed, and then desk shields are available. Will that be explicitly explained to staff members? So
yes, that's a good point. Yes. We've gone around the block a few times about face shield, and I think that's where that information is in there. And there's been some discussion about well, are they effective? You can't wear if you don't wear a mask. It's a face shield, and there's research out that shows that you still with a face shield have to wear a mask. But we felt that we shouldn't deny if a teacher wants a face shield and feels more safe with the face shield, or if they're going to be getting closer to their students. And there's some staff who actually have to have a face shield because they actually will have to physically, like some of our special needs teachers, actually that will be a piece of some equipment that they have to have. But we've went ahead and said it's just something that we'll just have to purchase enough for every teacher, and that's where that language come from. The other piece is we have a supply of PPE like face masks. We ask folks to wear one to school, so they should have their own. But we have a supply of face shields and gloves for cleaning and those types of things. So we do have a good supply of what we need. But I think that language you're talking about as available, we initially were going to have that as a request item, but we felt if someone needs it, we want to make sure we have it available, and we don't want to delay receiving that item. So we've already went ahead to start making the purchase face shields. Again, face shields are safe with a mask, so it's just an added layer of protection. Some folks, if they want to have one, there will be one available. And as far as the desk shields in classrooms, we want to make sure that schools have an ample supply because students will be separated 6 feet apart. But we know and realistically that in elementary and secondary, we value group work, students having station work in elementary, those types of things. So we want to make sure that we can still, if kids are coming in for in-person instruction, we want to maximize that opportunity. So we felt it would be great to have at least some level of desk shielding available, portable desk shielding available for classrooms at the school site.
Thank you, Dr. Best. Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's more along a statement / question. Stress. It's obvious that, stress is paramount throughout not just the school system, but families and children at home. But as far as from the school position, how are we managing the stress of teachers, administrators in preparation to open up Is it a gradual thing? Are we phasing it in? What type of things do we have in place to address the statement that one of the speakers brought forth? And I'm only saying based on my own personal experience. I know it's true when it's time to prepare for something. War is stressful, but this is also stressful to administrators and staff and teachers as well. And if not managed properly, it only bleeds over into the classroom, which now we got another problem. So what do we have in place to ensure that they have the downtime, the notification to ramp back up at 100%? Or are we keeping them at 100%? Or are we, phasing them, phasing the stress in or stress overload over time to be able to manage it? So are we looking at that as a school division?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and superintendents get stressed too.
Right. I didn't mention you.
So it includes me, but I just want you to know they're stressed here.
I added you to it.
All right. So the first thing we have to realize, information and inclusivity are the first layers of making sure you de-stress individuals. Because when folks feel like they don't have any input in the decisions that are being made and that things are being done to them versus done with them, there's going to be stress. Mm-hmm. We can't move the pandemic. We're in a crisis period, unfortunately, in this school year, and people have legitimate concerns with how we move forward with our business. And we also have families that are relying on us to work through these decisions. So we definitely understand the trajectory that we're on, and it will cause some levels of stress. Now, we've done several things. One is we put out the Return to Learn Weekly that allows us to give good information out to our constituents, our staff, so that they're in the know of what recent updates and recent decisions will be. We have also involved our teachers and our building level principals in much of the decision making that we're presenting this evening. We've asked for their input. We've asked them to review our documents. We've asked them to help develop that timeline and plan and give us the rationale and considerations, and develop a handbook that they can legitimately put processes in place in their buildings with checklists and other things that will allow them to better communicate with their staff and their parents as we move forward with the process. In that timeline, in this plan, it's it's just dates, but in the principal's plan, there are teacher work days in there, but like before the kids come back, there'll be some time where kids are working asynchronously, where teachers will have a day to prepare. The building will have some time to prepare. Built into the schedule, training days for specific days, Wednesday activities that allow them to get better information on safety protocols and those types of things. And I think I've sent that to the board. You guys have seen a more detailed plan. Mm-hmm. So the reason and that was with principal input to make sure that we provide adequate time for staff to have unencumbered activities, time to plan and process before we have students return to in-person instruction. And then the other pieces is we have to continue to highlight great practices and success around the division, because there are a lot of folks who are working hard and doing phenomenal work. And we sometimes get moving so fast we forget to spotlight individuals that are really showing the best of who we are as an organization and why it matters that we're doing what we're doing. So I know we can't give everyone a massage chair or do some other things that might be surface level or superficial, but I think we can acknowledge the work that individuals are doing, continue to get greater access to the decisions that we're making, make sure that they have adequate access to the information that we're providing, and hopefully we can continue to work collaboratively with our staff, which will allow us to see a little further down the road than just, okay, I just got this memo today and I got to start doing this on Monday. And I think we want to minimize those experiences that teachers are experiencing to make sure that they're better prepared.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Other questions? Mr. Ely or Mr. Hunter?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So we do have, I think, time for one more round for folks who want to do a follow-up, follow-up question.
I have hopefully a very simple
Yes, go ahead,
question. When we were talking about this in early October, there was some We talked a bit about how some of the schedules might change slightly. You know, some of the elementary might go later and get out later. Are we still thinking about some of that? This may be to be developed.
Talking transportation.
Transportation and like school hours if your kids are going to be going on for the half day.
Dr. Manglamott, I'll let you speak to that, but if you need, I know if you need any assistance, did you hear the question?
I did, yes, I heard it. And the transportation times, I don't have the schedule up in front of me right now. So I really feel like I can't answer that and be 100% accurate.
So I think the original question came that we had some preschool programs that were not used to being on a later bus cycle that were going to be placed on a later bus cycle. Now, we do have some that have always traditionally been on a later cycle, and those parents and families are used to coming back after daylight savings time and being and possibly being coming home and it be after sunset or at least at sunset. But to your knowledge, have you seen a transportation schedule, or is that something we're still developing at this time? I know we're taking it into consideration as far as which schools will be on a later bus cycle. Mr. Wright, do you have any information on that?
Good evening, Board. Our plan and our timeline is to ensure that we communicate any pre-K and elementary needs for schedule change by December 14th, and to finalize our transportation schedules and/or changes and get that out to our community before the Christmas holiday, which would be December 21st. So that's a part of our comprehensive timeline, and we'll be communicating any of those changes and give our families ample time to prepare.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions? Yes, Dr. Best.
About the air purification. It said if there's more than one person, if there is one person, then just no.
Well, we're not saying no. We're saying that they would obviously not be at greater risk of catching COVID from themselves. So,
No.
so the whole purpose of the air purifiers is to move the air in a space where that's occupied by multiple participants, to keep the air flowing to minimize the risk of any transmission. So we are looking at classrooms first that will be occupied, office spaces that are occupied by multiple persons and other spaces, and we've already purchased some more purifiers. Those were the first ones we bought. Were the number of classrooms, making sure everyone had those devices. But we will continue to purchase them, and if there is legitimate need at the building, we'll make sure everyone has what they need. But the whole purpose is to move the airflow in that room space of multiple occupancy. If you're in an individual office space and you have a lot of traffic coming in there, like maybe a bookkeeper, you probably may need a system in there if you have folks coming in and out of your space. So it's really to make sure that airflow is meeting ASHRAE standards, to make sure that the folks that are in that space, occupying that space, are at less risk.
Okay, because I was thinking of someone like a speech pathologist or someone like that.
I think one of the building principals are in communication with operations, and some have already moved some because we may have a teacher that has a classroom that's virtual that's not that's already been approved exempt, but we may have bought a purifier for their room. So they are maybe taking some of those and moving them where they need them, but we also want to continue to make sure every classroom, every space that's needs one in the building has one. This is a long-term investment for us. It's not just a COVID pandemic item. We feel that we'll use these purifiers for years to come. So we'll continue to see more of them being put in those buildings that need them as part of our normal maintenance procedures.
Okay. Additional questions? All right. I'll just add one question. This may involve Mr. Jenkins, so I'll just warn him now because back there. So I did receive this question from most of the questions I believe have been covered, but I received this question from a teacher and from other teachers as well, that they have created what they feel is a really nice setup in their home. They went out and got monitors and document cameras and other things for their virtual teaching, and now they don't want to necessarily bring those supplies back and forth from home to the building. What kinds of accommodations or things can we do to work with those teachers who feel like they've got an optimal setup and they would like to try to replicate that setup in the school.
Mr. Brown, this is a question that was asked of a principal, if the technology department would provide a second monitor for teachers to use in the classroom. There are 1,800 teachers approximately in the school district, and monitors cost about $100 a piece. We provide teachers with a laptop. We also provide them with a smartboard and projector, which they could use as a very large second monitor while they're teaching virtually in their classroom. So there currently are no plans nor any funding earmarked to buy additional technology for teachers in the classroom. That said, if a teacher has a requirement like a visual impairment and goes through HR and gets a medical accommodation, then we always honor those, and it takes a simple request from the HR department. But it's just not feasible for us. We spent some time in the workshop talking about our technology budget already, and while we would love for to be able to do this for teachers, it's not something that we would be able to do.
Now, do all the teachers, and I'll just ask this as a generality, have they had training? Do they know how to hook up to the smart board? And could we get them some training on hooking up to the smart board if they didn't know that was an option for them, to show them how easy it could be to?
Well, for our veteran teachers, the only people who probably would need some extra help with that would be our first year teachers who didn't actually get to set foot in the classroom this year, but we do have instructional technology coaches who help them with all of the educational technology, and then also a quick call to our help desk, and we can dispatch a technology support person to walk down there and show them how to connect to it and make sure that things are set up so it displays properly for them.
Great, thank you. All right, are there any further questions? Yes, Mr. Harris.
No, I don't have.
Oh, no, okay, just stretching your hand. Okay, great. All right, well then, thank you, Dr. Parker, for that presentation, wonderful presentation on Return to Learn. So now we'll move on to item 5.02, which is our proposed FY21 legislative program. Oof.
Well, good evening, Chairman Brown, Vice Chair, Chair Searles Law, board members, and Dr. Parker. It's a pleasure to be here to provide a look at the issues surrounding this year's, actually 2021's General Assembly session. The legislative program, which you've seen in the board docs, is the board's opportunity to convey what you consider key issues for the 2021 session. As part of this process, we've added a new component to look at the issues and provide coordination between the school division and the city's legislative efforts so we can work together a little bit better on some issues. I want to thank the superintendent and chairman for adding the Joint Government Relations Committee to the list of school board members, and to thank Vice Chairman Searles Law, Member John Ely, and City Councilwoman Tina Vick for their leadership on the committee, as well as my counterpart Jerry Wilson, the city's legislative manager. As the legislative process begins, this committee will help coordinate the city and the school division's efforts to help us work more closely, more hand in hand. The draft legislative program, as I said, has been posted on board docs for public review, in addition to being shared with the school board members. And I'll just like to take a quick look at some key dates as we start off, just to orient us for that. So, Michelle, I guess I'm driving here. Okay. Let me see here. Oh, you got it. All right. Thank you. No, thank you. Appreciate that. So, the timeline. The General Assembly session begins January 13th, and there's currently a disagreement, which I have not seen before in my many years of doing this, between the members of whether this will be a 30 or a 45-day session. So they're working on that. We do know that it will be held in a virtual format. And the dates here are based on the traditional 45-day session, which until just a couple of days ago, we thought that's what it would be. Yesterday was the VSBA Delegate Assembly, virtual Delegate Assembly, and Vice Chair Mrs. Searles Law represented Newport News Public Schools on the legislative issues that they were talking about. And it was also Take Your Legislator to School Day, which I believe will be highlighted later in the meeting. So a couple of other dates to remember quickly are December 9th, the school board virtual legislative roundtable with our General Assembly members. And December 16th is a big day. The governor will come out, is scheduled to come out with his budget proposal. On the next slide, we're taking a look at the 2021 key priorities. We have 8 in this version of the legislative program. Most of these relate to school funding and the pandemic. COVID-19 has affected nearly every aspect of life, and education has felt a significant impact, and that's reflected in this year's legislative program. So in the interest of time, I'll go over each position briefly on the following slides. This first slide talks about the restoration of education funding. If you'll remember, at the end of the General Assembly in March, we were fairly elated with the positive outcome for that. The legislators had made a significant additional investment in K-12. Well, that changed almost as soon as the ink dried on the budget document, and many of the gains were taken back during the April veto session. The August to October special session, which lasted almost as long as a regular session, restored some cuts, but not those listed here, the 3 you see on the page. So this position calls for those 3 items on the screen to be funded as originally approved with the General Assembly's 2020 session. The next position talks about an enrollment loss hold harmless. And this position asks the General Assembly to allocate enrollment funding based on enrollment prior to the shutdown. And there's a very good reason for this. The State Department, the Virginia Department of Education, estimates that COVID has led to lower enrollment up to, and maybe more than 38,000 students statewide. What that will do is reduce funding for school divisions across the state by, it says $155 million. I believe that's gone up to possibly as high as $200 million, and several $1 million, of course, for Newport News. So it's important to note that school divisions, you had to approve your budget in, I believe it was by the end of March, April 1st. And you've already committed the funds that we thought we had. And the loss of this funding could result in cutbacks later in the year. Next position is sort of similar, sales tax hold harmless. In the special session this year, the August to October session, the General Assembly approved $95 million statewide for schools as replacement funding for reduced sales tax revenue. This will help schools avoid major cuts this year, and this position calls for the hold harmless to be repeated if the sales tax slumps next year again. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take this off. Thank you. I appreciate that.
We can pass out.
Okay, thank you. It is. It is. Our next position, teacher recruitment, retention, and salaries. This is a perennial issue. We have, as long as I can remember, asked for more money for teachers. We know they need it for retention, to keep them here, to recruit them, and just for their salaries. This position remains unchanged this year, and as the slide shows, Virginia is significantly below the national average for teacher pay. And again, as I said in one of the first slides, the approved state pay raise that was approved in March was canceled in May, or actually I think it was April. So the next position was also a kind of a perennial position in terms of school facility funding. There's been a study that's shown there's more than $4 billion in unmet school construction and renovation needs. This position is largely unchanged from last year except for one key item. That's the last bullet on this screen. And that would ask the General Assembly to allow all localities to increase the local sales tax by up to 1% for school construction or renovation. And this would have to, of course, go through the City Council or Board of Supervisors, whichever it is, and be approved by voters in each locality and it would have a time date on it as well. Currently, only Halifax and Mecklenburg counties have this option, but other localities are beginning to ask for it. The next position, again, something that we've asked for years, is a dedicated funding stream for technology. And of course, as you've seen, this year has just amplified that need incredibly. I can't highlight all of them, but to serve students during the pandemic, Newport News has provided, I believe it's over 22,000 laptops, Chromebooks, and other devices for students, over 5,000 hotspots, added additional temporary staff, and established technology help centers across the school division to help not only speed up service in schools, but for families and parents as well. So this position simply asks the state to recognize this real need for a dedicated funding source for technology, for internet access, and appropriate staff based on today's reality. The next position is a new one, student social and emotional needs. Research shows that many young people experience mental health disorders every year, and it says about 1 in 6, according, I believe it's the National Institutes of Health. And according to a Gallup poll of parents and some research from Centers for Disease Control, many young people's social, emotional, and mental well-being has been impacted by the pandemic. And I think we could all agree that it's been a stress on everybody. So to address this growing challenge, this position asks that the state reallocate what was to be new funding for school counselors, and of course that was cut, and allow flexibility for those funds to include social workers, psychologists, and other mental health professionals to assist in this effort. Our final position of the night is dual enrollment tuition. A proposal by the Virginia Community College System would set a minimum amount that must be charged for dual enrollment tuition. Currently, an agreement between Newport News Public Schools and Thomas Nelson Community College allows students to take dual enrollment courses at no charge from NMPS teachers who are certified in dual enrollment. So this position calls for the current tuition practice to remain in place. On our next slide, it's just a listing of the key priorities, and I can take some questions now if you'd like, or just move on to the final slide of next steps.
Questions? I think we can move
And
on.
if there are none, great. Move on to the next steps, which is very straightforward. We'll provide our legislators, now that you've seen this, with a draft, a copy of the draft program. We will hold the virtual legislative roundtable on December 9th with our local legislators and yourselves. This will be an action item at the December board meeting. We'll continue to meet. I believe we have another meeting set for December with the Joint Government Relations Committee. And, of course, support the legislative program during the 2021 General Assembly session. So that's the report for tonight. If you have any questions now or later, please feel free to contact me. I'll do my best.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Penner.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, now we will move on to item 5.03, the attendance report, 5.04, the membership report, and 5.05, the construction report. Board members, you received copies of these reports in your board docs packet. Are there any questions? Hearing none, then we'll move on to item 5.06, comments by the superintendent. Dr. Parker, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with the Teacher of the Day for a Day program that was offered earlier this week. November is the VSBA, Take Your Legislator to School Month, and in commemoration of that event, we hosted a Teacher for a Day program yesterday. We invited state legislators, city council, and members of Newport News Education Foundation and the superintendent's roundtable to join a class and experience virtual instruction firsthand. Our day began with a virtual chat with our guest teachers, and then they joined educators at various schools to experience teaching and learning in a virtual environment. After their classes, they joined me for a quick presentation and reflections. Special thanks to Senator Monty Mason, Delegate Shelley Simons, Sharon Conte, President and CEO of the Virginia Educators Credit Union, Dr. Susan English, Vice President of Academic Affairs, Thomas Nelson Community College, Dr. Willett Maxwell, pastor of New Beach Grove Baptist Church, Ms. Lou Maynard, President of the Newport News Council of PTAs, who is shown in this picture, reading to her first grade class for the day, and School Board Chairman Mr. Douglas Brown, Vice Chairman Lisa Searles Law, and Board Member Gary Hunter for participating in the Teacher for a Day program yesterday. As we stated earlier this evening, this is American Education Week, and our students and staff are celebrating the annual observance by promoting a variety of special events and acknowledgments on social media. So here are a few of those students and educators now up here. Festivities will continue throughout the end of this week. So continue to post on social media and support Newport News Public School and show how proud you are. Meals to Go. We'll continue with our Meals to Go service the week of Thanksgiving. Meals will be served at all sites Monday, November 23rd and Tuesday, November 24th from 4 to 5 p.m. On Tuesdays, families will receive 2 days of meals for their children. And on Friday, November 27th, meals will be served at the sites listed here from 4 to 5 p.m. So we'll make sure that information is made available to all of our schools and our community for over the holiday period. Can't believe it's all. We're already planning in December. The Magnet Program application process for the 21-22 school year is now underway, and applications are due on January 8th. Magnet schools offer students specialized educational options, including environmental science, communication, and performing arts, aviation, and global studies and STEM. Magnet schools will host virtual open houses December 1st through 15th for students and families. For more information, visit our website. I'd like to remind all students and families and staff that on Wednesday, November 25th, all schools are closed and offices. November 25th, all schools are closed. Offices are open half day. And all schools and offices will be closed on November 26th and 27th in honor of the Thanksgiving holiday. I wish everyone a happy and safe Thanksgiving. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my comments.
All right, thank you, Dr. Parker. All right, now we'll move on to item 6, which is another opportunity to hear from the public. Are there any cards? Are there any cards? There being no cards, then we will move on to matters by the school board. And Mr. Moody, you're up first.
All righty, well, good evening to everyone. I want to begin by thanking all of our teachers, our principals, our support staff, anyone who is in constant contact with us, the students. I just want to thank you all so much for all that you all are doing. This week is a big week. I had the privilege and honor of with the rest of the student representatives in Virginia of attending the Student Representative Workshop for the Virginia School Board Association. In Newport News Public Schools, I'm happy to say that we led the way in many things, and a big ups that nobody else has really is our Youth Development Department. When I said that we had that, they looked like deers in a headlight. So I'm happy to say that we have a youth development department and we're going strong. My senior family, I did want to remind you to go ahead and apply or do your FAFSA, and that this week is Virginia College Week, okay? I want to thank Dr. Hines and her professional school counseling directors and all who are working with us for Virginia College Week. I met with my student leadership family last week. Sage, that was last week, right? Last week. I met with Sage last week, and I'm so happy. There's an amazing group of students this year, and I cannot wait to see the great things that we will do. As we enter into Thanksgiving break, my student family, I just want to make sure that you are continuing to do all of your work. Make sure that you stay up to date with your work so that you will not go lacking as a consequence of our break. I am happy, and this is the first time publicly anyone knows this, so if you're viewing this, then you're in for a treat. After much what is the word?
Consideration?
Yes, after much consideration and prayers and all that stuff, I'm happy to say that the Vibe student-led talk show will be hosting a winter break block party, virtual block party. So we will be having another block party. And to stay up to date with all that they're doing, you can follow them at NNPS The Vibe. And as always, you can stay connected with me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at StudentRepNNPS. That concludes my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. All right.
Yeah, he got it. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Ely, why don't we go to you next?
Yeah.
We have Mr. Ely. Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back to him if he's on. Miss Amy.
Sure. Well, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's worked so hard in putting the Return to Learn plan together. And I know a lot of meetings and focus groups and efforts have gone into it. So it was really good and exciting to see what's planned. I'm actually very encouraged, especially for the elementary students, to be able to get some of that teacher contact each and every day. I think that's going to be great. And I know we're going to keep working hard and more details are going to come out. So just wanted to give a big thank you and congratulations for all of your efforts. I know it's been an incredible year and everybody's going above and beyond each and every day. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Amy. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no comments.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. All right, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great things are happening in Newport News Public Schools. I want to give a quick shout out to Jenkins Elementary. I had an opportunity to spend my time with two first grade math classes yesterday. I've learned some stuff about math and doubles. You know, 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 2 is 4, and it's amazing that our teachers. I was with Mitch Cross in her class, and I'm going to tell you, it is amazing what our teachers do and how they adapted and how the kids have adapted to this virtual learning. I was blown apart, but the kids were involved. But I also noticed there were some challenges also with some other kids because, you know, in the environment that we do have some smaller kids watching their other kids at home. So, reality is real. And I do want to thank all the teachers that are out there that are doing the best they can for our students under this very, very challenging time. And just remember, I mean, we're school board members, and as we said, school boards are under stress. This is my seventh year on the school board. I don't think I've ever received as many emails from our teachers and from our parents. But the good thing is about it, they're engaged. I'd rather get lots of emails than no emails at all. I'd rather get lots of emails than no emails at all. And so we are, and I take that to heart, that we have parents and our teachers that are really engaged. And I know, I will give you a quick story for our teachers out there. And I had a person come to me, and I never really thought about it. And he says, "Hey, Mr. Hunter, when are we going to get the kids back in school?" I says, "We're doing our best." He says, "Well, I'm a nurse, and I have 3 kids. And I've been going to work every day. And I have a kid, in 2nd, 4th, and 8th grade. So teachers, I do get it. But, we all sometimes have to take a deep breath. It's not just this school and the COVID, but the whole country we're all are tense.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
We're all tense. So I want to say thank you to that. And again, I want to give one more thank out since I didn't have any questions today. I do want to give a special thanks to our chairman of the board, Mr. Brown. And I tell you why, and our school board members and Dr. Parker for us becoming a master school board. And I'm going to tell you through that master school board sessions that we've had over the last course of this pandemic, we have become a better school board, and we have become a tighter school board, and we have been able to agree to disagree. And this is what I want the country to do. Remember, we can agree to disagree, teachers, parents, but we all have to come together to work together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. All right. That brings us to Dr. Best.
Good evening. Since Mr. Hunter took one of my 2 minutes, I'll just talk for 1 minute. Didn't have an opportunity to participate in Teacher for a Day. I had a conflict. However, I was able to visit 2 classrooms at Heritage High School a couple of weeks before, so I would like to do a special shout out for Dr. Hunter and Ms. Eagle for inviting me to Heritage High School. And as Mr. Hunter said, the teachers are just absolutely amazing with what they're doing, education, and our students are being educated and they're receiving really, really good education. And also, just a reminder to parents, just peep in every now and then. Make sure your kids are turning those cameras on. Make sure they get those assignments complete. And it is very, very important that they are there and that they are engaged, because our teachers are doing the very best that they can. And I would just like to wish everybody a happy American Education Week. Thank you.
Vice Chair Souls Law.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to pick up on the American Education Week, and when I saw that was this week, I have just been in great thought over Newport News Public Schools and what our teachers and administrators have accomplished this year. It is an amazing feat, and we see on the school board not just Newport News, but we see school boards across the nation. And the real truth is, in our microcosm, we have challenges, just as other school districts do. But I have to tell you, I am so thankful that we are approaching the things that we're doing the way that we are doing, that we're listening, we're paying attention to our constituents. Our teachers are our professionals. Dr. Parker went to really great lengths, even just in our district, as an example, to have our teachers be able to work from home during the real heart of our virtual learning. And I was really surprised that very few school boards were allowing, or districts were allowing, their teachers to do that. So I'm excited to know that we are doing best practices. I'm encouraging our board to make sure that we're doing best practices in as many areas as we possibly can. And my hat's off to Dr. Parker and his team right now. I know we're going to see even more planning and more ways that will keep students and teachers engaged. But as Mr. Hunter says, we do appreciate hearing your comments and your concerns. And your praises. Those are nice too sometimes. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. All right, so a bit of business, as I alluded to in my chairman memo that I sent out to all of you. Recall that in August, we adopted our norms and protocols, and our norms and protocols called for a mid-year evaluation of the superintendent in December. However, COVID-19 strikes again, and as a result of COVID-19, we're electing to delay that mid-year evaluation to January, and so we will have that mid-year evaluation occur at our January board meeting. I want to thank everyone for all of the hard work and the effort that has gone into preparing us to return to learn. And I know that this has been a very long and arduous process, and I want to thank the superintendent and his staff for all of the hard work and all the listening that went into developing this most recent timeline and this update. I, too, had a great opportunity to participate in the Teacher for a Day. And Mr. Sard, she was very humble. She didn't let me know she was the Teacher of the Year when she was teaching me, you know. I didn't know I was in the presence of royalty, but it was a great lesson. I still take away, I learned about the P53 protein and its ability to fight cancer. So I was really, like I mentioned earlier in the week, very excited and took away from that science class something that got me inspired to learn more about cells and cell mutation. We've got the Virginia School Board Association annual conference coming up the rest of this week. It's going to be a busy week for the board. And I want to thank the board for all of the time and effort that went into us becoming a master board. And I want to thank Dr. Parker. I know amidst all of this crisis and difficulty, we drug you through master board training as well. And so thank you for all of the effort that's gone into this. We know that there's been a tremendous amount of stress and turmoil placed upon our staff. And we thank you for it. We're, this Thanksgiving holiday, we're thankful for all your perseverance and your ability to give your best to our kids every day. So with that, we will see you all again December 15th, and have a great holiday, and we'll see you again in December.